to end the show today. We are going to do another installment of the Front Office Frenzy segment. We've been having some good luck with some easy teams as of late. And if you are new to this segment, and this is your first time listening or watching this segment, because of all of these segments do get posted on YouTube after the show is over. If you're new to the segment, it's a segment in which I draw a team randomly out of this hat right here, and in 15 minutes or less, I am tasked with creating a logical, reasonable game plan for that team to end up being in the playoffs at the very least next season. I have basically no help. I've got the team's record. I've got the cap space for that team as of February 4th when I looked up all the cap spaces, so obviously that might be a little bit different. And then I have the amount of draft picks that team has in the draft, along with some smaller bullet points, whether that be an important free agent or an important name to remember to help me carry myself through the segment. Other than that, I'm basically doing all of this off the top of my head. And today's team is going to be... Oh, the New York Football Giants. Ooh, okay. That's actually kind of topical. Man, the Front Office Frenzy has been, the Hat of Wonders has been doing very good for me recently. Wow. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the Giants earlier today. They've already cut some players, so their cap space is going to be a little bit outdated, but itching my nose a little bit. Excuse me. Pardon me. The Giants were 6-10 last season. They had $2 million in cap space as of February 4th. With the cutting of David Mayo and Golden Tate, they probably have closer to maybe $12 million at this point. I think Golden Tate saved about $5 million in cap space, if I remember correctly. So they have about $10 million in cap space at this point, and they have 6 picks in the 2021 NFL Draft. The Football Giants. The Giants... I think the biggest thing to note with the Giants is that they looked absolutely lost on offense without Saquon Barkley. Saquon had another horrible injury, tearing his ACL. And without him, the Giants looked absolutely horrible. Daniel Jones looked like a bust. The Giants wide receiver core were very inconsistent. Golden Tate dropped a lot of passes. Evan Ingram dropped a lot of passes. Darius Slayton and Shepard looked okay at times, but there's no dominant number one wide receiver in New York since Odell Beckham Jr. left. And, the defense was what kept the Giants in games for a lot of the games last season. It was an above average defense, I think top 15 in the NFL in most categories. So good, but not great, but good enough to keep them in some ball games. The defensive backcourt for the Giants did surprisingly well, and Leonard Williams had an outstanding season on a franchise tag, so they're probably going to have to do something about Leonard Williams this offseason. I don't know if the money's there to necessarily re-sign Leonard Williams, but I will probably get to that. This is really a make-or-break year for David Gettleman, I think. Most Giants fans will be quick to tell you that they do not like David Gettleman and they want that man gone. So if the Giants miss the playoffs again this season in an NFC East division, which is absolutely horrible, then this will probably be Gettleman's last season in New York. So what do the Giants do to be contenders in this upcoming season in the NFC East, where they do really have a good chance to host a playoff game because all of those teams are really, really bad. The Eagles are going to be probably bottom barrel of the league. The Redskins are probably the best team in that division at this point, and then the Cowboys, especially if they don't sign Dak Prescott, they're going to be not so good. If the Giants are ever going to be able to make it to the playoffs, they're going to need Daniel Jones. They're going to need to give Daniel Jones some other weapons to work with. They're going to need to give him the chance to live up to his number 6 overall selection back in 2019. They need to give him some offensive weapons. The defense proved capable enough to where you can finally get some more weapons on the offensive side of the ball. First of all, get Evan Ingram off my damn football team. I don't know how that man was selected to a Pro Bowl last season when he had close to 11 drops. And as I read a stat, something when I was reading about Golden Tate for another segment earlier today, which is like, wow, the Front Office Frenzy is actually doing me some favors by picking a team that I actually read about recently. With the Golden Tate releasing, with Evan Ingram, the Colts, not the Colts, what the fuck? The Giants quarterbacks had thrown 12 interceptions, and 6 of those interceptions came on balls thrown to Evan Ingram, and a lot of them were tipped slash dropped passes to Evan Ingram that resulted in interceptions. Get Evan Ingram off my damn football team. You need to find a replacement for him, and I think your replacement actually just got released by Minnesota earlier this week. I think Kyle Rudolph would be a great replacement for Evan Ingram. That's a surefire, veteran, nice person, great football player in Kyle Rudolph. That would be a great replacement for Evan Ingram, and that would be a great target for Daniel Jones. You might be able to get him a little bit cheaper. Obviously, money is an important concern to Rudolph at this point because he didn't take a pay cut in Minnesota. But regardless, especially if you're breaking open that cap space and you're getting some more cap space now instead of $2 million like I had in my notes with the dropping of Mayo and Golden Tate, you now have closer to $10 million. You could absolutely sign. You can absolutely sign Rudolph and make some cuts elsewhere. So I think trading out Ingram and getting Rudolph would be a really good idea for the Giants. I want Evan Ingram off my football team. And then it just, falls on getting some more offensive weapons for Daniel Jones. I mean, the Giants aren't in the best position to make a lot of free agent moves this offseason, but they can make some cuts on the offensive line. I think between Nate Solder and Kevin Zeitzler, I think his name is, they can save about anywhere from like $15 to $20 million in cap space. So if you really wanted to get some cap space, you can replace some members of the offensive line. Nate Solder is a backup at best at this point in his career, not worth the cap space that you're paying him. And Zeitzler, I believe, was one of the higher graded guards at his position, but I do believe the Giants drafted a young guard that is getting a lot of playing time and he's getting much better, so maybe you can afford to cut Zeitler. Yeah, the offensive line isn't going to be that great for the Giants this year on that knowledge, and obviously Daniel Jones was under some pressure last season, so you got to weigh your options a little bit there. But I think if you're looking for general cap space, if you can cut $20 million from the offensive line and put that into weapons for Daniel Jones, you should do it, and then focus on the draft to get some more offensive line talent. Leonard Williams is a free agent this season. They franchised him last season. We talked about that at the beginning of the segment. I think you need to put some serious thought and money into paying Leonard Williams. You can franchise him again at about $37 million, which is a gigantic cap hit to take, but I think you probably want to invest in getting Leonard Williams a long-term contract if possible. He was probably your best player on defense last year. You got to make the money to get there, which is why I'm like, hey, the Giants don't have a lot of space to do too much in free agency, but again, it depends on how much money they cut. Apart from Leonard Williams, I'm trying to think here. I think another place that the Giants should go to in terms of free agency is maybe getting a second cornerback that is, to go across from Bradbury, who had a really good season. You can get a number 2 cornerback, maybe somebody like Richard Sherman, who now is entering that mercenary stage of his NFL career, where you can sign him for a 1 or 2 year $10 million deal. So it's a $5 million per deal cut with any X amount of guaranteed money. So Richard Sherman is going into that mercenary stage of his career. You might be able to get a nice number 2 cornerback like Sherman to go across from Bradbury and really bolster the defensive backcourt, which was one of the best groups for the Giants defense last year. And then I think you really just need to rely on the draft at that point. Because again, it depends on how much money you can cut from the offensive line. Again, I said about 15 to 20 million if you cut those specific players. About 10 million if you choose to cut Solder and keep Kevin Zeitzler. But then again, that limits the amount that you can spend in free agency. We'll see how that develops. And again, I'm sorry for this being so scatterbrained, but this is all coming off the top of my head. I think that's all that I would think about doing in free agency. Obviously, the defensive line is an area of concern for the Giants. They needed a better pass rush last season apart from Leonard Williams. So I think when it comes to the draft, with your first round pick, you either need to go with Jaylen Waddle out of Alabama, if you can't get anybody in free agency, which I don't think the Giants are going to go after a wide receiver in free agency, if you can get Jaylen Waddle at number 11th, I mean, Waddle is fast, he's explosive, he's legitimately one step behind Devonta Smith coming out of Alabama. He could be an absolute steal. He might actually be better than Devonta Smith one day, depending on what system he goes into. Jaylen Waddle would be a great pickup for the Giants at 11. I can't remember. I think the last time they drafted a wide receiver this high probably would have been Odell Beckham Jr. They need a good number one wide receiver. Waddle could step in and be that number one wide receiver almost immediately. If you don't want to go wide receiver, definitely go defensive end. Gregory Rousseau. I've thrown around that name for a lot of teams so far this segment, or during this segment series. Gregory Rousseau is probably the best defensive end in the draft on a lot of people's boards, so if he's available at 11, take him at 11, get some better pass rush on the defense, and then hope that you make enough free agency acquisitions to bolster the offense for the Giants. Round 2, I think you take the best offensive player on the line, whether that's a tackle, whether that's a center, whether that's a guard. I think you probably take the best offensive lineman, especially if you're going to lose and cut multiple offensive linemen off in your free agency cuts. And with the number 11th pick in each subsequent round, you'd have a very good chance to catch an offensive lineman that's a first-round talent that slipped into the second round. So I think second round, you need to go offensive lineman if you're David Gettleman in New York. And then your third-round pick, and if you're new here, we only go through the first 3 rounds and then maybe some recommendations for the later rounds. Round number 3, Asante Samuel Jr. out of Florida State could be another quarterback. Say you sign Richard Sherman in the offseason. You can also draft Asante Samuel Jr. He's on the small side. He's got a ball-hawking personality, so he could be a slot cornerback, or he can play the outside opposite to Bradbury. Again, he's a little undersized, just like his father, crazy enough. But that could be another good cornerback acquisition to really solidify the cornerback position for the Giants. Again, I know the defensive backcourt was pretty good for the Giants last season, but you can always get better in that aspect, and especially it's so hard to find a good slot cornerback in the NFL, and I think Asante Samuel is going to size up to be about that for whatever team he gets drafted for. And I think that's pretty much all I can say about the New York Giants. That is how the New York Giants can be contenders by the end of next season. Thank you so much for listening to the Front Office Frenzy segment. Tune in next time to see if we do your team next. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.